2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. Today we are taking a closer look at the facts and fiction of marijuana and how to open the conversation about marijuana and drug use with youngsters. My guest today is Stephanie Walnick. She's a prevention specialist with Wyoming Valley Alcohol and Drug Services. And Stephanie has been in many classrooms talking to many young people and talking to adults about marijuana and drugs for quite some time now, so she brings a wealth of experience to our table today. And Stephanie, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And as I said, Stephanie, you've been educating people about drugs and alcohol for quite some time. Tell us a little bit about that, your experience.
Wow. So I'm going on 25 years in prevention and education, and I love it. You know, it's you never know what's going to come out of their mouths. But it's not just for kids. Education is for adults. I mean, we don't advertise it this way, although I guess if I'm saying it here, we are. We go from womb to tomb, okay? You know, with pregnant women and the substances that they may be taking during pregnancy, all the way up. In the summertime, I go into daycares and preschools.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, start with 3 and 4 year olds, and all the way through college. Parents, even in the summer, I also go to the senior centers in Luzerne County.
So, you know, drug and alcohol touch all of our lives. And tell us a little bit about the history of Wyoming Valley Alcohol and Drug Services. They've been part of our community for quite some time.
Absolutely. Well, Wyoming Valley Alcohol and Drug Services has been around since June of 1973. As a matter of fact, we just celebrated our we will be coming up on 53 years. It's amazing and how far we've come. We started out just as a counseling and treatment, outpatient counseling treatment, but one of our first executive directors, Carmen Ambrosino, saw that there was need for education in the community, and he started that in the mid-'70s, and he went around to colleges. I remember seeing him in college. And then we became a department in the 1980s. And that's when I started, was in the 1980s. I took a little break in between working with homeless, but then I came back because it's my love.
And it touches everybody's lives. And, you know, you mentioned going into daycare. To me, that's amazing, talking that young to youngsters. But today, you know, we're going to focus our conversation on, you know, marijuana awareness. And, you know, we hear a lot about marijuana nowadays, you know, recreational, medical. But let's start with the basic question. What is marijuana?
Okay. Well, marijuana and cannabis are used interchangeably by people, but cannabis is technically the plant, okay? It's the botany name for cannabis sativa. It refers to the whole plant, the stems, the leaves, the flower, everything. Marijuana is the stuff that is actually used, the parts of the plant that are actually used for medicinal or personal use.
And, you know, we hear, you know, about people saying about marijuana, but we also hear the letters THC, and they're associated sometimes with drinks and edibles. Is THC, is that something that is addictive, or?
That's what is addictive. That is the psychoactive chemical that's the cannabinoid that's in cannabis, marijuana, that gets you high. And it stands for, the molecular structure is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. Thank goodness they shortened it.
Wow, yeah.
It's a mouthful. But yes, they have THC-infused drinks, THC-infused gummies, and all that kind of stuff. Now, the drinks that you might be seeing around, and they are legal in Pennsylvania, but they have 0.03% THC. So they're not sold in a dispensary, okay? But it's not going to get you high either. It's kind of like non-alcoholic beer. When you see non-alcoholic beer, it has alcohol in it, but it's 0.05%, okay? So it's not going to get you drunk, but it's just part of the natural process. It's hard, you can't take it out.
So, I mean, we're seeing these nowadays in our you know, coming up. I just even saw recently that at one of the ballparks, they're going to start selling it as, you know, for refreshments and that during the ball game. And you know, it just there's so many questions when you're looking at marijuana and what is it, and you know, so the question is, can you become addicted to marijuana? And I think I know the answer, but can you become addicted to marijuana?
Absolutely. It's actually listed as an addiction in what they call the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual Edition number 5. It's called cannabis use disorder. And they're estimating that 30% of cannabis users, okay, or marijuana users, are addicted. And of those, 17% are youth.
Wow.
That are addicted. So
Wow.
yes, you can become addicted. So the first addiction is always psychological, where you like it, you think you need it to have fun, to relax, to party, to fit in, whatever, but then not long after, the physical addiction, where your body doesn't feel right without it. Your physically does not, you go through withdrawal symptoms without it.
You go into a classroom and you talk to these young people, but what does marijuana, how does it impact their development and their health, their mental health?
So the important thing to remember is that our bodies are, the girls, their bodies aren't done growing until they're 20. Boys, they're not done growing until they're 22. But the brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25 years old. So after their bodies are done growing, their brains are still developing brain cells. That's why we go to school when we're young, because we learn faster. I should say we. The kids are learning faster than anybody over the age of 25. At 25, that development stops, and you have the most brain cells you're ever going to have in your life at 25 to 45. Then the aging process takes over. What happens with young people, because their brains are still developing, it makes their brain is learning a bad thing with nicotine, marijuana, THC, alcohol, anything like that. If they use before the brain is done developing, the brain is learning a bad thing. And it's also, then it makes it vulnerable to addiction. And once that's there, you can't get it out.
And then you will need to seek help in order to
Yes.
get back to your, not normal way of life before using the substance.
Exactly. But it's always going to be there.
And I know, we have some of the questions that we were wondering about. When you talk about marijuana, we remembered in the 60s and 70s. So is that the same marijuana that we're seeing today?
Oh, no way. So back in the 60s and 70s, when it became part of pop culture, the hippies, the flower children, the rock music, the mini skirts, the birth control by women, it was a very tumultuous time. And marijuana became part of pop culture then. Before that, it was used by artists, primarily musicians and those artsy people. But when, in the 60s, when it became part of pop culture then, the marijuana was only 1% THC. Okay, in the 70s, I think it went up to 2%. In the 80s and 90s, it was 3%. But in the late 90s and into the 2000s, they were hybriding it from strains all over the world. Different areas have different strains of it. And they were hybriding it to make it, now today, it's anywhere from 13 to 30% for the flower, and up to 99% in the concentrates.
Oh my goodness. And then
Yes.
we were also talking about this. People are also mixing stuff within the marijuana, which makes it even more of a danger. I recently I heard about, embalming fluid. I heard about, of course, fentanyl, all this other different stuff that they're, how do you talk to people about that? How do you stress that you got to, you may want to try this, but you may not know what you're getting?
I love that they trust their dealer. It's like one of those oxymorons to me. But so, it's a highly competitive market, and you're always trying to make a person come back to you. So what dealers do is they add things to make it different from the guy down the street. So they'll add formaldehyde, the embalming fluid. They'll add cocaine. Oh gosh, I remember when PCP was a big thing, or meth or heroin. Okay, and then you get that little extra little something, and so then you keep going back to that one. So yes, they're always constantly experimenting to see what it is how they can grab that user.
And the truth is, they probably don't even realize what what's in there, the person that's using it.
Oh, no, they'll just say, oh, mine's better than theirs.
And just go on continuing to take that. For me, it would say to take a real risk and a chance to not know what you're what you're getting, and
Yep.
what if impact it will have on you. We hear about medical marijuana. That's something that's become very common that we hear. How is medical marijuana different than, say, your street marijuana?
Well, I guess the good news about medical marijuana is that it's highly regulated. Okay, it has to be licensed facilities and laboratories and all that use it. I mean, farmers, they have to, have licenses for all this kind of stuff. And that's the good news about it. The potency is about the same, okay? Maybe a little stronger in the medical, not much stronger. But at least you're getting it regulated. Whereas the street stuff, again, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know who's growing it and that kind of thing. And you could even be getting the fake marijuana, that K2 stuff, the spice.
Oh, okay. Let's talk a little bit about that. That's the gas. Is that referred to as gas station marijuana?
It's now illegal in Pennsylvania, thank goodness, because even in Wilkes-Barre we had a couple of deaths.
Right.
And I knew the guys, unfortunately.
But that's the stuff you see when you go into a store. And what is that? I mean, sometimes you see it there, people come in buying it, and you're wondering, maybe I'm naive, and I think I am, and I think, well, what are they buying?
Yeah, so it's not advertised as gas station weed, okay? It's advertised as kratom. That's the one that you're going to see the most.
Right.
Which is still legal. It's a tropical plant, okay, that does provide a relaxing psychoactive effect. The fact that it's still legal is bothersome to me. And then people out there might be thinking, well, she doesn't like to have any fun, does she, at all? But, I just don't see the need in legalizing another drug when we already have problems with alcohol.
And you said to me, alcohol continues to be, is that still the number one?
Still the number one most widely used and abused drug in the United States.
And then another thing you mentioned was nicotine was not too far behind. And, when you think about alcohol and nicotine, then you think about going into the marijuana realm. Is it same, different? You as an educator, is it all the same, or is the risk there for all of it?
The risk is there. People hesitate to use the word gateway. Okay, I'm not afraid to use it. Okay, as a matter of fact, I was just teaching before I came here. I was teaching kids about nicotine today, and I was saying that people start with nicotine, okay, and then they could progress on to other stuff when they want to get something different. So they might progress on from nicotine to marijuana to alcohol. No one wakes up in the morning and goes to cocaine or goes to heroin. If you ask any of them, they will say they started with nicotine.
And then it just...
Right. And so not everybody that tries nicotine or alcohol or marijuana goes on to the harder drugs. But the opposite is true. The ones that are using harder drugs always started there with either nicotine or alcohol or weed.
And now, you were talking, they're also vaping marijuana, which is that a new concern among young people?
Yes, because then parents don't really, and grown-ups, the adults in their lives don't really know whether it's a THC vape or whether it's a nicotine vape. So
it could be, that's something that parents should become more aware of.
Absolutely.
And, I want to remind everybody you can find information on today's show, and we have a lot more information that Stephanie has provided us with on 2822news.com. We're under the Newsmakers link, and there that we have other links to sites so parents can learn more and you can hear more about our conversation. We are going to come back. I'm with Stephanie Walnick from the Wyoming Valley Alcohol and Drug Services, and we're going to continue our conversation. You're watching Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. We'll be back right after this.
2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda. .2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. My guest today is Stephanie Walnick. She is a education prevention specialist with Wyoming Valley Alcohol and Drug Services, Inc. And Stephanie's been with Newsmakers, oh my goodness, a number of shows we've done over the years on a variety of topics. And today we're focusing on marijuana to educate people, educate teens, educate adults, and educate all age groups about it, because it's something that we hear about every day. And Stephanie, you're in the classroom, you're with young people, and what questions are they asking you about marijuana when you go in there and you start talking about the dangers? What do they say?
Okay, so first of all, they get tobacco and marijuana mixed up a lot. Okay, because they don't call it marijuana, they call it weed. All right, so they think that weed is a tobacco product. It has nicotine in it, and I, of course, dispel that myth. But they think it's harmless because a lot of the adults that they know use it medicinally, they say. Even little ones. If they come in, little itty bitty elementary kids, they're coming into school and they're reeking of it. It has a very distinctive odor. It smells like skunks. And when you ask them about it, they say, "Oh, my mommy takes her medicine while she's driving me to school." Oh. I'm like, "Oh, okay, thank you." So, yes. So, and the other thing, kids are constantly looking up things, and I'm like, "Okay, thank you. I'm going to have to look that one up when I leave here today." Like I just found out today about the caffeine pouches. Right. I found out about the nicotine pouches. That is a good idea. To help people quit smoking, putting the smoke in their lungs, to quit smoking or vaping. But kids are now using it to get the nicotine so that they're not caught with the vapes or smoking cigarettes. And then they asked about caffeine pouches, and I quick looked that up. Caffeine pouches, again, so you're not drinking coffee or tea, or again, a lot of kids aren't allowed to bring anything but water into school in clear plastic containers, so they can't have their Monster drinks or their Red Bull. And so the caffeine pouches is an easy way, and the nicotine pouch, easy way to have it in school.
So we're not enjoying our morning cup of coffee. We're now using it in a. It's amazing how youngsters and teens are already on. Is it the social media aspect of it that they're?
Absolutely. Social media gets the information out there faster than I can, than any of us could.
Right. And if you're a parent at home and you want to start the conversation about drugs, about marijuana, alcohol, how do you begin? What do you say? And then you're telling me you're talking to elementary kids, and to me, I'm thinking, well, maybe the conversation starts in middle school. But it's starting before you go to school even.
Right.
So how do you begin that conversation?
So first of all, remember that you're approaching your child with love and concern for their health. And that's how I would approach it, is like, I love you. I want you around for a long time. I'm concerned about your health. So please, don't start smoking cigarettes or using nicotine or vaping, because I want you to live as long as you can. And if you're a person that smokes or drink, remind them that you are 21 and it is legal for you to do that. But also that it's very hard to quit once you start. And when they get a little bit older, then you can start going into, hey, so do you know any of your friends use vapes or nicotine or even marijuana or weed? Can ask them like that. And you don't ask who they are. It's like, don't worry, I'm not going to ask who they are, but do you know anybody? Have you ever been offered that? That kind of stuff. So start it like, again, that you're concerned about them, that you love them dearly. Don't depend on people like me to give them all the information. Please. You are the number one influence on your child's life forever. Friends come and friends go. I come and go. So you're their number one influence. Learn as much as you can. There's a couple websites that'll give you great information and even conversation starters.
And sometimes we think we want to be our kid's best friend, but sometimes it's good to just be a parent and just get out there and tell them
absolutely
what's going on. I know as a drug educator, is it difficult to convince people in today's society about the dangers of marijuana, because you're talking a lot about people saying, about recreational, about medical. Is it difficult to kind of say there's still a danger out there?
Absolutely. It's, as people, say, oh, but it's natural, it's not going to hurt you. Well, guess what? Tobacco is too. Alcohol is too. Cocaine is too. Heroin is too. They're all natural. They all come from nature. And look how dangerous they are. It's not addictive. Well, yes, it's addictive. But everybody's doing it. Well, no, most people are not doing it, and at least it's not a hard drug, no, but it can lead to that. So as those perceptions are out there and widely spread, and as the perception of the risk goes down, it drives use up. More and more people say, well, it's not that risky, so I'm going to try it. So it's really, it's a hard fought battle. It's an uphill battle. It really is.
And then, as somebody, you have seen people with addiction come to you. Do many of them, look back and think, back in my younger years, maybe if somebody said something to me, then I wouldn't be where I am now? Do you ever hear someone say that who's been in addiction?
I wish I knew. Well, yes, I've heard I wish I knew, but guess what? They probably, especially the younger generation, like even Gen X, had it in school. I started doing this over 40 years ago, and they're in their 50s now. So yes, they did have it then. Now, has it evolved? Absolutely. We are now teaching. It's not just about the drugs and what they do. Okay. Now we're teaching skills. We're teaching about how to set and reach goals, how to make good, responsible decisions, how to choose friends with good qualities, how to be a friend with good qualities, communication, peer pressure, refusal skills, and then the alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. But it's not just about those things, because that might make them just curious about if we just did that. Now it's all the skill building, the life skills that go around in refusing it.
And you mentioned earlier that, alcohol and smoking still a concern among young people. Is you're teaching that too? I mean, in my day, I think it was more alcohol. When I was in high school, that was I would say drug of choice, I guess,
Right.
because that's, and that's going back years. But then as it evolved, even nowadays, you were mentioning the caffeine pouches and the nicotine pouches, and they're just out there, and kids are looking at them. But I think you say it's a great opportunity. It is a good opportunity for a parent maybe to step in and say something and say, these are not healthy lifestyle choices.
Absolutely. And it's never going to stop, Jane Ann. I mean, when I worked for Reach over at St. Stephen's across the street from here, I came up with a saying: you build a better mousetrap, and Mother Nature goes and builds a better mouse.
Right. Okay,
They're always
that's
going to
true.
find ways around it. So the companies, in order to make money, they are always going to find a way around things. Vaping is one of them. Okay, so we found out how bad cigarettes were in the 90s, how really bad it was, and we put a lot of money into education, and guess what? Not as many people started smoking cigarettes. That's a great thing, okay? Well, 5 years later, they come up with vapes.
Right. So
it's just water vapor. No, it's not. That's a lie. There is no water in it. The only vapor is steam from a hot bath or pot of tea. And now that we find out that vaping is not good for you, okay, after 23 years, now they come up with nicotine pouches. So it's always, and then the caffeine pouch. So again, at every turn, they're going to invent something different.
Right.
That's what they're looking for is the lifelong user. They don't care about your health.
No.
Okay, they don't care that my dad died from smoking cigarettes, as long as there's somebody else to take his place.
That's right. That's interesting. And when we were talking, what is the next drug concern facing young people? I know we had opioids, heroin. They're still out there. Still something kids are facing every day. I guess I'm always amazed when we talk. There's something new on the horizon that's out there. Are you hearing anything that's out there that kids should be wary of? A parent should be looking at?
Well, again, I'm thinking that I'm not seeing anything new except for those like caffeine and nicotine pouches right now. But I think our biggest nemesis right now is marijuana, just because of how, again, the risk seems to people so low because it's medicinal. Okay, it can help with my anxiety. Actually, it makes anxiety worse. It can cause psychoses. If you have a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia but never get it in your lifetime, marijuana can bring that on. Okay, it can bring on paranoia because of the strength of the potency of that. I think that's my biggest concern. Is it's so potent nowadays that it can bring on psychoses, psychotic breaks, paranoia, schizophrenia. That's what I'm afraid of, and people are using it. I'll give you an example. After COVID, and once in actually right before COVID, in 2019, Pennsylvania legalized medical marijuana for anxiety disorders. Now, we are only one of 8 states that did that, okay? So either those other 30 states know something we don't know, or we know something they don't know. Anyway, after COVID, the medical marijuana certificates for anxiety shot up 400%.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing. Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
And that's a whole other,
That's a whole other
topic. I do want to remind people, if somebody's watching out there, a school or perhaps a youth group, a church group, senior group, that they can contact you. We have the information on the screen. You have a very active Facebook page where people can find information. Your website's very informative, and you've provided us with plenty of information to put on our website on 2822news.com. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being out there talking to young people and for joining me today. And I know we'll be talking in the future about, unfortunately, in your world, there's always something to discuss.
Always something, unfortunately.
Well, we hope everyone learned a lot today. I want to thank Matt Gronsky, Tony Gargiola, and Andy Dean for helping with today's show, and Joey Nardone behind the board, along with Matt. You can find information on today's show on 2822news.com. We're under the Newsmakers link. I'll have information there so you can reach out to Stephanie if you want to talk. I want to thank everyone for making Newsmakers part of your day, and we'll talk again next time.
2822 Now presents Newsmakers with your host, Jane Ann Bugda.